All right. Hey, everybody. Ken Gouchi back at you again with the Veterans Angle podcast. I think I'm going to kind of go off a little bit of the beaten path today. I said that I was going to talk a little bit more about Mormons and Illuminati and all kinds of stuff. Not everything that I talk about is dealing with religion. In fact, as most of you may or may not know, I actually despise discussing religion just because I know how personal so many people take it. To me, religion is not that big of a deal just because, I understand the purpose of religion. But for the average person who really, this is all they have to hang on to, I understand why they don't like to be challenged. Back in my younger days when I was an up and comer, I didn't appreciate being challenged on my theology either. And that's kind of the point. I say it all the time. The two greatest competitive sports ever created are religion and politics, and that is all it is. It's just it's a competition of philosophy, right? That's all it is. Oh, my Jesus is better than your Jesus. No, Bish, my Jesus is better than your Jesus. Right? It's childish, but this is what makes the world turn. And unfortunately, religion actually works both ways. Sometimes it benefits, right? I mean, religion is a good thing in and of itself. The fraternal organizational structure of religion is a good thing, right? It absolutely gives people a social network. It gives people a safety net. It gives people a group of like-minded tribes, right? That's what it is. It's a tribe. It's a fraternity. And when people use it for what it's meant to be used for, it's a beautiful thing, right? When people use it as a social or when they use it for that purpose, religion works perfectly. It doesn't matter which religion we're talking about, right? Islam is just all it is a group of people that came together because they didn't want to have to survive the brutalities of this world on their own, right? So when we talk about things like cognitive dissonance and when we talk about things like, just basic brainwashing, right? That's what it is. Mass psychosis. That's what religion is, right? It's mass psychosis. It's a culture. That's why religion and culture are the exact same thing. But today, forget about all that for today. Today, I kind of want to go off topic. And it's not really off topic because it's still dealing with religion and religious ideology. But this is an example of something that has actually worked against society and human evolution. This is actually something that has worked against it. So today's video is actually going to be on the monogamy hoax, right? And as a lot of you people may or may not know, right? I always brag that I practice modern polygyny, and polygyny. When people hear the word polygamy, they don't understand that there's actually two different types, two different categories of polygamy, right? One is polygyny, which is one man with multiple women. And then one is polyandry, which is one woman with multiple men, right? Now, to kick this all off with, and before we even get into the religious context of it all, I would like to explain a couple of things to some of you out there. And that is the fact that humans, in particular, are biologically designed to be polygynous, right? If you've ever studied any evolutionary biology whatsoever, it's easy to see that most species with physically larger males are going to be geared towards polygyny, right? One man with multiple women. Whereas any species that has physically larger females is going to be geared towards polyandry. Right? This is like your ants and your bees and your lizards, right? Some birds are like this. Some birds have physically larger females, and so therefore their system is based off of polyandry, where one woman is getting inseminated by multiple males because that's specific species. That's how they obtain their genetic diversity. But in other species, here again, species with physically larger males, genetic diversity is a bad thing. In fact, I would think that most scientists would probably agree that the Neanderthals actually went extinct because they were polyamorous, right? They screwed everything. It didn't matter husband, wife, daughter, sister, right? I mean, if it walked, they fucked it. Basically that's how they operated. And even in today's world, we still see even different forms of monkeys. For example, gorillas are 100% polygynous, where chimpanzees are entirely polyamorous, right? And here again, you look at the size difference between male and female gorillas compared to male and female chimps, and you see that chimps have much similar size ranges in between their male and female chimps. Whereas gorillas, right? Male gorillas are significantly larger than female gorillas, and they are a polygynous group. But anyway, the point is that humans, right? Humans are also polygynous. Our males are physically larger, stronger, and smarter and faster than women, than females, right? This is how humans are biologically designed, so that men can hunt, so that men can build, and most importantly, so that men can fight, right? That is just how humans are naturally designed. Women, believe it or not, men have higher IQs, right? That's intellectual intelligence, whereas women have higher EQs, right? That's basically their emotional intelligence, right? The reason that women have this higher level of EQ is so that they don't eat their babies when they're born, right? I mean, this is literally the reason, the difference between the biological differences between males and females. And it's really unfortunate that we live in such a little beta world that has been indoctrinated through religious betification, basically. I call it the emasculation of the West, right? And unfortunately, religions have tamped down human nature so bad that now everybody thinks it's a sin for humans to just practice a lifestyle that if we were still just a bunch of monkeys running around the woods, our default system would be polygyny, right? The strongest alpha males would have their pick, and the betas would have to be out just fucking themselves. Okay, this is actually how humans are designed to be, right? And I hate to tell everybody this, but it's still that way, right? The strongest men still have their pick of the herd. And the strongest alpha males still get multiple women, whether they want to admit it or not, right? Because we live in this bullshit serial monogamy society, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But basically, polygyny has been ridiculed and marked, and I'm going to explain why this happened, right? And I'm going to explain, especially like the Mormon movement, the Mormon polygamy movement. I'm going to explain how it ended so badly. So just bear with me. But before I get into any of this, there was a book that I read a long time ago. For all of you who don't know, I have a degree in sociology, and so this kind of stuff has really always been very, interesting to me. But basically, there was a world-renowned sociologist. I believe he's a British guy from England. From Oxford, I believe. I'm not for sure. I think his name was Eric Erickson or something like that. Anyway, he wrote a book. It was just a very small pamphlet. And he wrote a book called The Monogamy Gap. Love men and the reality of cheating. Right? Excellent book. It actually wasn't until many years later that I found out that this author is actually gay. So, I don't really take it seriously anymore. But the book in and of itself is an excellent book for people that are curious about this type of thing. Now, furthermore, I'm gonna kind of jump into because there's all kinds of stuff out there in the manosphere, and you got little dudes like Andrew Tate that are always, yipping about this kind of stuff, even though he doesn't even understand it. But the simple truth is that alpha males are biologically designed to spread their seed, right? It's no different than putting the biggest bull into the cow pen. It's no different than, having the biggest stallion to go and breed with all the horses, right? In human form, the alpha males are absolutely biologically designed to spread their seed. And that biological urge is just as strong for those men as it is for a woman to reproduce to begin with. Right? So think about this. Why is it okay for a woman to fulfill her biological urges by reproducing and carrying on life, but it's not okay for men to do the same thing? Why has that become a socially accepted thing? Right? And so this is what I mean when I say that a lot of people don't even put two and two together. Okay, a lot of people just have no concept about any of it. But this is where I'm going to get into the religiosity of it all. And it's kind of interesting because I had this debate a couple of days ago with a Mormon guy. And I was trying to explain to him that there are a lot of similarities between early Mormonism and early Islam, right? Both religions were started as a non-Trinitarian Christian sect. Both religions centered around things like polygamy, right? And here again, I'm going to explain the religiosity of it here coming up. But there was a lot of similarities to it, and both of them obviously had more of a Gnostic tone than a Roman Christian tone to it. So that's the difference, but they're all the same damn, basically all the same theologies. Here again, it's like, everybody yelling, my Jesus is better than your Jesus. Well, no, bitch, mine is better than, it's so childish. But I'm not here to talk specifically about religion today. I'm only here to talk about polygamy. So first, everybody always asks, especially the Mormons, they say, oh, well, Joseph Smith just received divine inspiration and that's what gave him his idea. No, it's not. Okay, Joseph Smith got the idea of polygamy from Isaiah 4:1. Okay, that's in the Old Testament. Everybody knows Isaiah. Everybody knows that he's actually from the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? And Isaiah 1 specifically talks about how 7 women will take on the name of one man in the latter days. This is where Islam came up with it, 1,300 years ago. And this is where Joseph Smith came up with it 150 years ago. It's all the same thing, right? And what these religious founders did is they were theological study. They researched it and they noticed a trend, right? They noticed a trend between biblical characters and even non-biblical characters. I'll give you an example. Like they look at Moses, Abraham, King David, King Solomon, non-biblical figures like Genghis Khan. I'm going to get to him in a second, right? Genghis Khan, Muhammad. And as you all know, I believe that Muhammad and Jesus are the same person, right? Jesus had 12 apostles. Muhammad supposedly had 12 wives. They're the same guy. They just split, just a different group of people just picked a different dude's name to turn him into their superhero, and that's all it is. But this also goes back to my belief that the Muslims and I believe even Joseph Smith understood that Jesus was polygynous himself. Jesus had multiple wives. And here again, whether you believe that Jesus and Muhammad are the same guy or not, there's plenty of evidence to suggest that Jesus had multiple wives. And I've got a video just on that with the, I call it the hoax, the Jesus hoax, right? The Jesus hoax. But none of this, here again, what it all comes down to, and everybody always says, well, the New Testament doesn't support polygamy and it doesn't, there's no place in the New Testament that condemns it. Okay, everybody says there's no place that endorses it. Yes, there is. Isaiah 4:1. That is where every religion gets its ideas from polygamy that practices it. Okay, and again, they look at historical figures like Moses, Abraham, King David, King Solomon. Now let's look at Genghis Khan. Oh, and just FYI, from a religious perspective, the reason that these people believe in polygamy is because they believe that in order to become a god, first you have to be capable of mass reproduction and building your own nation on earth first. How can you become your own god if you don't even have the ability to have more than a couple of kids? And I mean this seriously. If somebody could sit there and think, like looking at the whole equation through Joseph Smith's perception and through his reality, how can anyone become their own God? Whether you believe that's possible or not, just ask the basic question. How can somebody become their own God if they are incapable of mass reproduction and building their own nation on earth first? Okay. So this is where the religious views of it come from. And I'm going to get back to like King Solomon, right? King Solomon, responsible for building the nation of Israel, had 1,000 wives, right? 600 married, 400 concubines. That's what the Bible says, right? That is how he built, right? This is how Jews became into an existence, is because one man created it. And he created it through mass reproduction. Now, we could even look at non-biblical characters, like historical figures, like Genghis Khan. Right? Genghis Khan had 600 plus wives. They don't actually know the exact number, but they know that he had thousands of children. Let me repeat that. Thousands. To this day, 1 out of every 200 Asians can be directly traced to Genghis Khan. Okay, 1 out of 4 can be indirectly traced to him. Do that math. That math is staggering. Asians make up 58% of the world's population. So that is a staggering number of descendants. And I'll tell you, if anybody was ever actually able to become their own god, I would think that somebody like that would be the guy who would be able to do it. Right? He didn't ask for permission. He didn't ask for anything. And here's the thing. All of these men, if you notice the trend, here again, Moses, Abraham, King David, King Solomon, Genghis Khan, Muhammad, right, which I believe is Jesus. All of these men were brave enough to break away from their existing belief system, and all of these men were brave enough to create their own. All of them. They all created their own movements. Even Joseph Smith, even, you could even look at any other little church guy. Look at Billy Graham. I mean, he created a nation. It may all be based on BS. These people are brave enough to step out of their comfort zone and actually go against the rest of the world and create systems where they have to actually convince people to follow them. That takes a level of bravery and badassery that only an alpha male can perform. Now, I'm not saying that Billy Graham or Joel Osteen, they're obviously not alpha males, but they have learned the trick of the trade as far as recruitment and pushing their message. And that's a respectable thing. Anybody who does that should be respected. Now, obviously, Muslims in particular, they still practice polygamy. They have a 4-wife limit. So, you're only allowed to marry up to 4 women in Islam, which again, I believe this falls back to Jesus. I don't believe that Muhammad had 12 wives, and I don't believe that Jesus had 12 disciples. I believe that Jesus had 4 wives, which is why I believe Islam says that you can only have 4 wives. And I made an entire video on that. Polygamy, here's the problem with it. And this is actually where I'm going to kind of get into the meat and potatoes of all this. The problem with polygamy, at least American polygamy, because in places like Africa and Saudi Arabia and places like that, it still works fine, right? Because in those places, it's actually geared, it's based off of survival, right? So it's actually, women are able to pick the strongest male in their societies, and that's who they marry, and that's who they have polygynous relationships with. That is how polygyny is supposed to be done, right? Polygyny is not supposed to. Let me try to explain this. I don't know exactly how to word this, but especially in the Mormon kind of structure that they kind of turned themselves into. Taylor was really the last Mormon president who actually knew what he was doing. Right, I tell the story all the time how Wilford Woodruff came in. He ended Mormon polygamy. He ended Freemasonry within the ranks of the presidency and the quorum, and that was the beginning of the end for the religion. After that, that's when the FLDS broke away, and that's when they continued practicing their polygamy. I believe it was Taylor's son who had his own, little hidden polygamy cult somewhere, but not was it John Taylor? Oh man, I can't even remember their names. But anyway, the point is that after this point, when Wilford Woodruff, so you're looking at like the 1890 to 1910 time period, right? So you're kind of looking at a lot of different political movements that were going on, including the anti-Masonic movement. Then you had feminist groups that were pushing, because that's the thing. Most people don't understand that when the Mormons were going up against the federal government, it wasn't just the army that they were going up against. There were entire feminist movements that were lobbying Congress, and of course, it took a bunch of Dudley Do-Right Republicans to come and say, because here's what happened. Basically, the feminists started telling Congress, they started saying, man, if men can have multiple women, then we should be able to have multiple men. So the little beta Dudley Do-Right Republicans caved, and they said, one man, so we're just going to make the whole thing illegal, right? This is before gay rights. This is before tranny rights. This is before all of this, right? This was the original feminist movement issue in America, was polygamy. And the problem with it is that the polygamists were becoming so strong and so powerful because here again, there is power in numbers. Right? There's power in numbers. Anytime you can grow your team, that makes you more powerful. And when you start being able to control entire economies, and when you start being able to control the shift of political movements and all kinds of other things, all the other people on the outside are looking in saying, man, I don't like that. Okay. So it was actually a feminist movement that ended Mormon polygamy. Most people don't realize that. Even Mormons, they don't realize that. It was not the army. The wars between the government and the Mormons, it wasn't as brutal as everyone likes to pretend. Yeah, okay, so people got killed. But it didn't last for 20 years. It wasn't like the army was sending in, mass cavalry trying to, eradicate all of Utah. It didn't happen like that. There was some skirmishes. There's no doubt about it. There was some death. But Mormon polygamy was actually ended because Congress was lobbied by feminist groups to end it. And of course, the little beta pussy Wilford Woodruff caved, right? And that's when he ended Mormon polygamy in 1890. And of course, he tried to make it sound like it was a revelation from God. And, all of a sudden, God changed his mind, I guess. So it was okay for Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and Taylor to, have 85,000 wives. But all of a sudden, it wasn't okay. It's like, these are the things that prove that religions are man-made, right? This is the proof right there, right? Because God doesn't change his mind. Right? It's kind of like the difference between the Old Testament, Isaiah 4:1, saying that it's okay for men to have 7 wives, and even commanding us to take on those wives to help them become whole again. That's what that entire Isaiah 4:1 is about. It's not about continuing the human race. It is about protecting women, bringing women into an existing team, and giving them the safety and support that no other person could give them. That's what it's about. The problem is, here again, I'm going to continue on this story with American polygamy in particular. The problem was is that after it was ended in the Mormon Church in 1890, the Mormons that continued on with the practice were not alpha males, right? They were little beta God guys. So in other words, they were doing it for the wrong reasons. They were doing it because they thought God told them to do it. When the truth is that polygyny is designed specifically for alpha males. I used to talk about this. I actually got into an argument with Andrew Tate about this one time. Only about 7% of the male population, and this fluctuates depending on wartime, peacetime. Obviously, there's other contributing factors that will absolutely boost masculinity levels in any given society, right? Right now, we just happen to be a very unmasculine society, right? We're a feminized society. We have been completely betatized. And the reason that is because life has gotten so easy, right? You can cook your food with the touch of a button, right? So nobody's out there hunting. Nobody's out there trying to stay warm. Nobody's out there, having to defend themselves from lions and bears and, other people. Well, we basically have Big Brother to do that for us now. So that's the point is humans don't need those larger tribes. They don't need that power in numbers because everything is so easy. And this is what's kind of gotten, this is what's really pushed it away. But on top of that, when you have these people that continued the practice and they started doing things like forced marriages, pedophilia, incest, right? It became a system instead of offering women more freedom, because that's what polygyny is designed for. Polygyny in its true form benefits women, okay? Because it gives them that stronger team leader to bond to. Okay, that's what we call natural polygyny or nature's polygyny, right? Women will always gravitate towards the strongest male. This is biologically hardwired into their brains. This is a survival tactic. And like I said, it still happens even to this day. Women are obviously, this is where you get like your 666, right? You want somebody that's 6 feet tall with a 6-inch cock and who makes 6-figure income, right? This is where people like Andrew Tate and what's that other dude's name? Cooper, whatever. Cooper. This is where these manosphere guys start claiming that, men are supposed to be polygynous. And they're right. They just don't know why they're right. And the point is that polygyny got a bad reputation from these weak beta men who were pretending to do it for God, right? As if God gives a single rat's ass about who we sleep with or how we produce. God doesn't care. God put us on this earth to produce energy. And that's what we do. And one of the ways we do that is through reproduction. Right? That's it. It's a biological process. That's why we're here. But these weak beta men, okay, well, I'm going to name them, man. I'm going to name like Cody Brown. Okay, Cody, you all know the show Sister Wives, right? It's kind of funny because he was on a reality TV show here not too long ago, as like a special forces. I can't remember what it's called, but I thought it's kind of funny because I've actually been in special forces school, so I actually thought it was incredibly funny. It's not very realistic at all. But he was on one of those shows and he did very, very well. I can't remember. Well, I don't even think that season is over yet because I don't know who won that season. But I'm just saying, Cody Brown. And this is where people don't understand the difference between alphas and betas. They think that just because you're a big, strong guy, like if you listen to like Andrew Tate, he's going to say that an alpha male is a big, strong dude. No, that's not true. Being an alpha male has nothing to do with your physiology. It only has to do with your psychology, with your personality. Okay, you can be 110 pounds soaking wet, but you can still be a badass. Genghis Khan was not that big of a man, right? Genghis Khan was only like 6'6". But he was an alpha because it comes down to personality. It's not a physical characteristic. Now, most alpha males will obviously be a little bit more muscular. Some of them, it doesn't mean that you have to be ripped, but you definitely have to be able to fight. You definitely have to be able to lead. You definitely have to be able to do certain things. But again, these are personality characteristics, not physical characteristics. And the number one thing that alpha males want to do is they want to create legacies and they want to continue their bloodline purely. That's what polygyny offers. Polygyny offers a system where bloodlines can become entirely pure, and it avoids weaker genetics being introduced into the women so that they don't reproduce weak beta people. Right? This is why when you put the biggest, strongest, healthiest bull into the bullpen, or the strongest, biggest horse, this is what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to accomplish genetic superiority, right? Genetic purity. And that is actually what polygyny offers in its true form. But again, the problem is that so many of these people they just don't know anything about it. All they know is the bad stuff. All they know, they see on Sister Wives how Cody Brown has just lost all but one of his wives, right? It's like the reason that happened is because he wasn't strong enough to lead his team. That's it. The reason that happened is because he was doing it for the wrong reasons. The reason it happened is because they caved to public pressure. So that right there tells me that he's kind of a pussy, right? And it failed because, again, he didn't even understand the purpose of it. And so these are the things that I'm trying to tell everybody. These are the things that I'm trying to get people to rationalize. And like I said, there's so many different elements to it that people just don't realize. In its true form, it is the best system that humans can live under. But in today's world, it is not necessary because nobody is out there trying to survive. There's 8 billion people on this planet, right? And again, we survive. You just touch a button to cook your food. You don't even have to do anything, right? Survival is easy, and that's what I'm saying. This is why polygyny is not really recognized in today's world. And this is why Westerners don't understand it when people from Saudi Arabia or Africa do it. They think it's forced. They think it's a religious thing, and it's not. It's a survival thing. The bigger the team, the more successful you're going to be. I kind of like to give this analogy. Me being an Army guy, I like to give this analogy. So for all of you guys out there that have watched all the Chuck Norris movies and stuff, Delta Force, right? We all know who Delta Force is. Nowadays, call it whatever you want. But Delta Force, right, that's an Army Special Operations Unit. It's a Tier 1 Special Forces group is what it is. Special Forces Operational Detachment. It's hard to explain. It's not part of the Special Forces groups, but it is its own unit. Anyway, in this unit, it's very common for them to send men or Delta Force operators out on solo missions all by themselves. Right? Like when I was in Iraq, we used to see this one Delta guy walking around, especially at the airport. And it was just like, dude, what the hell are you doing, man? But, he was obviously out there hunting. He was out there hunting. But anyway, Delta Force is notorious for sending solo operators out there to accomplish missions. And when they do that, they have very, very low success rates. Right? It's a dangerous thing. It is a very, very dangerous mission. And then you have other units where sometimes they'll send out 2-man teams. That like SEALs. Navy SEALs are notorious for doing this dumb shit, but sometimes they'll send out 2-man teams. right? And it's usually going to be like a sniper post or an observation post or something like that. But when you move that team element from a solo operator up to a dual pair, right, a couple operators, it significantly hires it really raises the rate of success, right? It raises their success rates exponentially, right? Because you've got that extra support, you've got that, you've got that camaraderie, you've got that companionship. And so it's much more successful to do it like that. Then you have regular Army units or special forces teams, right? Like back in my day, it used to be a standard 12-man team that could be broken down into 6-man teams. But the point is that when you have that type of team structure, your success rates jump out of the roof. And that's the point. As a single person, as a solo operator out there floating around this world, we can do what we need to do. We can get the job done. But our success rates are not that high. Well, when you jump into a monogamous relationship where it's just you and one other person, your success rates jump dramatically, right? You're going to be able to accomplish a lot more in life because you have companionship, you have support. But when you expand that team even more and you bring women into that group that, anybody who believes, you cannot have a strong man without a strong woman right next to him. And guess what happens when you got 5 women next to you that are all strong, right? Your success rates become out of this world. But it only works if you're doing it for the right reasons. And again, if you're doing it because you think God wants you to do it, you will fail every single time. And this is the problem with American polygamy, is a whole bunch of beta pedophiles. They started thinking that somehow they were the ones that were meant to carry on the human race, I guess. I don't know. And so you've got these groups like Jeff Warren's, and you've got all these other, basically faggots who are out there raping their own kids. No wonder it's got such a bad reputation. Okay, because that is not what it is designed to do. Now, I don't know how else I can drive this message home to people. It's just truly unfortunate that nobody understands what polygyny actually is, how it should be practiced. I personally have been practicing it for the last 20 years of my life, right? And I tell the story where, to me, some people call my system polyamorous and some people call it polygynous. I call it polygynous because I am still the patriarch of my team. I am the team leader. But my system is revolved more of a closed triad / throuple relationship system. My wife is bi. So, she needs a woman in her life just as much as I need another woman in mine. But there's many different elements to it. And no, it's not all sexual. It's not all sexual deviancy, despite what, some of you perverts out there think. It's not like that at all. Okay? My system is 100% cohabitative. So we all live together, we work together, we sleep together, we eat together. Okay? It's 100%. Literally, we sleep in the same bed, all 3 of us. I've got a huge custom-made double queen size bed, and it works out very well. But the point is that when people look at it for how it's truly designed to be, it is the best system in the world. There is no other system that is as strong as this. And it's truly unfortunate, man. All these people that want to sit here and scream and yell about monogamy, again, humans are not designed to be monogamous. And that's the key part, is because nobody really is. There's a big difference between serial monogamy and actual monogamy, right? Monogamy means that you only sleep with one person for your entire life. There are very few people who can make that claim in this world. Even the most religiously devout people typically will get remarried after their partner dies. Well, if that's the case, then you are no longer monogamous. You may be a serial monogamist, but from a biological perspective for women, right? Because men's DNA does not get changed from sex unless you get a sexually transmitted disease or something like that. But women's DNA gets changed every single time they are inseminated. In fact, most people don't realize this. It's actually called womb imprinting. This is the reason that religions over the millennia have made claims like women should be virgins and women should be monogamous. Yeah, it is actually dangerous for women to sleep with more than one man. You know, the University of Seattle just released a study on this in 2022. The study is literally called Women Retain the DNA of Every Man They Sleep With. And this is a fact. This is why if you have a woman who's slept with multiple men, she can no longer produce a pure bloodline because she has retained the DNA of all of those men, and all of that DNA is going to be combined and mixed up and be introduced into whatever baby gets put into her system. It's called womb imprinting. And again, humans have known this for thousands upon thousands of years, right? We've known that anytime a woman, this is why religions push virginity and they push, celibacy and all this other kind of crap, is because they didn't understand the exact science of it back then, but they understood that when women sleep with multiple men, they can no longer ever produce a pure bloodline ever again. Now, I know the modern feminists, men and women, are going to sit here and whine and go, it's not true. Yes, it is. Okay. Every time that a man injects his sperm into a woman, it's no different than taking a COVID shot or a flu shot or any other type of shot, right? It changes your molecular structure. It changes your entire immune system. Well, this is how women are biologically designed. They are designed to mirror their men. Most people don't realize this. Genetics are so strong. If you ever look at like couples that have been married for like 70 years, and you start to notice, damn, they look a lot alike each other. Male DNA is so strong that it can actually change a woman's eye color over a duration of long time being injected by his sperm, right? This is what polygyny reduces. Polygyny reduces impure bloodlines, right? Polygyny, it reduces all of that. Now, to me, I think it's incredibly sad that we live in a world where we would rather see single mothers raising kids. We'd rather see women getting abused, all these things. We'd rather see, men out there cheating because they're just not brave enough to admit that they are polygynous, right? If men would stop asking for permission and if men would just be men, I hate to tell all you people this, but this is as old as the human race. Even the original creation story was Adam, Lilith, and Eve, not just Adam and Eve. But the betas of the world, they even had to take that out because they wanted to control human nature through emasculation. And that's exactly what Western society has had done. This is why religions like Islam are so attractive to people, because it still offers a level of masculinity. That's what Mormonism, that's how it became so popular, right? It came up in a time in American history where people were starting to get so crazy with their religious views. I mean, this is how we had, so many different variations of Christianity and all kinds of other shit pop up. And Mormonism attracted a lot of men because it offered a level of masculinity that other beta religions didn't offer. And that's all there is to it, man. I mean, this is so easy to me. A caveman could get it. But yet here we are. And I just don't understand why some people don't get this, right? Polygyny, again, humans are biologically designed for it. I'm sorry that this offends so many people out there, so many men. More than one woman. Okay, then don't be. Historically, only 30% of men ever reproduce. Historically, right? Historically, again, it all depends on, peace and war and all this other, famine and plagues and all, it just depends on what's going on in the world at any given time. It really does. But historically, only 30% of men have ever reproduced. Okay, that means that whether women want to, even now, right now, if you look at the dating statistics for American dating, right now, the dating statistics say that only 30% of males are in a relationship, but yet 62% of females claim that they're in a relationship between the ages of 18 and 40. So that should tell you right there that we still have hidden polygyny. People just aren't smart enough to recognize it. But here's the thing, if people would embrace it, and if people would recognize what it's actually meant for, instead of women going off with these little beta religious punks, if they actually went with the alpha men, they would never leave because they would love it that much. And that's the point. There's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. My system, I still consider it to be polygynous. I do not allow my women to touch any other man. I do not allow other men to even think about coming into my system. I'm not gay. I've got nothing against anyone who is. And, all those little, poly gerbils out there, you're free to do whatever you want. I just don't do it because, like I said, that's just not my preference. But I can understand it from all different angles. And it is just astounding to me that we live in a society where it's okay for two men to get married. It's okay for two women to get married. But yet it's not okay for one man to have a couple of hotties. Yeah. This is where I have to stop taking religion seriously. And this is where I say people try to use God for the wrong reasons. And this is definitely, polygyny is the one thing. I'm telling you all, if you've got somebody coming at you offering polygyny through a religious context, man, I would avoid it like the plague. Seriously, I would avoid it like the plague. If they do not understand the reasons behind it, then there is no help for them. But if you've got somebody that is offering it based off of a lifestyle option, that is a completely different thing. It's unfortunate here again that more people don't understand the religiosity of it. It's unfortunate that more people don't understand where Joseph Smith was coming from. Again, I asked a simple question. If you are incapable of mass reproduction and building your own nation on earth first, how could you ever expect to become a god and build an entire universe? And I want people to think about this rationally. Okay, stop with all the fear mongering. Stop with all the BS, beta narrative. Polygamy. I mean, think about it from a common sense perspective. If you are the type of person that believes that you can become your own god, why would you be able to do that if you're not even capable of building something small here on earth first? That's how Joseph Smith looked at it. That's how Brigham Young looked at it. They were trying to, on top of that, they were trying to build an army. The best way to build an army full of people that believe in the same system as you is by birth. Right? This is what Muslims are doing all over Europe right now. They're breeding out. Europe has been conquered without spilling a drop of blood. And it's happened through mass reproduction of Muslims. Right? When I lived in Germany, I lived in Germany for 7 years. And I had my little apartment in Wiesbaden, and right next door was this Muslim family, and this dude had 3 wives. And the one head wife, I called her number 1. She liked me. She was always talking to me, but man, her husband, man, I mean, he was like straight, like anti-American Christian. He was the kind of guy like I met in Iraq that I could have just killed right there on the spot. But the point is it's very amusing to see how some cultures and some societies react to certain things. Okay, because they're just as betafied in Europe, right? Europe has been betafied much longer than America ever has. If you had to compare the two, I would say that America is still much more masculine than Europe has ever been, right? We all know that Europeans are a bunch of metro fellas, right? And they have been conquered without spilling a drop of blood just through reproduction. The Muslims believe in reproduction. They understand that this is the best way to raise those numbers and to elevate those teams. You know, there's a reason why football teams don't just have two people on them, right? There's a reason why the bigger the team, the better chance there is for success. Kind of like that special forces story I was telling earlier, right? That's all there is to it. So listen, I'm going to tell you this. Look, if you are an alpha male, then you already know this, right? You already know this. You already know that you are the guy that's going to get multiple women, whether it's because of one area or another. You may be lucky enough to possess all of the elements, right? Personalities, right? All those things. Richard Cooper will tell you that if you don't have a $3 million sports car, that you're not a real alpha. Oh yeah, you are. Because I'll steal that $3 million sports car from you after I take your life, and there ain't shit you're going to be able to do about it. But that's the difference, right? Some men look at it as a social status. That is not what true alphaness is at all. This is what people like Andrew Tate need to comprehend. Man, there's a lot of strong dudes out there. Look at 99% of the military. Right? You don't have to be an alpha male. Again, being an alpha male is a personality trait. It's not a physical trait. And it all comes down to survival, thrival, and teamwork. Right? That's what it all comes down to. And that's how the alpha males are builders. We're not just not we. I don't claim to be anything. I'm just me. But they are builders. They are inventors. They're thinkers. That's what separates them from the rest of everybody else. And those are the men that women are biologically designed. Their brains are hardwired for it. Those are the men that women should be wanting to go after, even if it means that they have to share that man. I'm going to leave with this, and this is kind of just the last final thought of this. You know, as humans, we are pack animals. What that means is that we are tribal by design. We are not meant to be alone. We are social creatures. We are designed to be in packs, right? Just like a wolf pack, just like a tribe, right? Call it whatever you want. But nearly every single relationship that we have as humans is some form of poly, right? It's multiple. Right? We have multiple parents. All right, our parents are usually man and woman, but yet we're still able to love both of them. Right? We have multiple siblings, men and women. We're all able to love all of them. Children, same thing. Co-workers, friends. Right? We have all of these relationships that involve multiple other people, or poly. Right? Yet somehow humans, Western society in particular, somehow humans have been brainwashed to believe that you're only supposed to have one partner. And then they wonder why 50% of them end in divorce. Okay, you know that only 1%, 1 out of 10, so that's 10% of polygynous relationships fail. Only 10%, 1 out of 10. Yet 50% of so-called monogamous marriages fail in Western society. And I actually think those numbers are even starting to grow. Here again, right now, 23% of our children, of our population, is being raised by single mothers. If you all think that that's safer to do that, I say this all the time. We've seen what happened in the black community with fatherless homes, right? With several generations of fatherless homes, single mothers raising their little hood rats to be little, ghetto babies. right? And I'm not being racist here. We have actually seen the results of what happens when people live like that. Yet for some reason, the rest of our society thinks that they can do the same thing and nothing bad is going to happen. Man, I'll tell you, the single biggest epidemic in this country is single motherhood households. The single biggest epidemic in this country. Single mother households. If we had a system that believed in something as simple as polygyny, we could literally avoid 90% of that. Now, that's not to say that every single mom's out there is going to go, rush to Utah or something, right? I'm just saying that if it was a socially accepted thing, it would reduce a lot of problems. It would give these young children a positive male role model. It would teach them teamwork. There's all kinds of elements to it that it would benefit our society with. So I just want people to think about this. It's really crazy to me that more people don't get it. You all look at this like, oh, y'all just don't know what you're talking about. But I digress. I hope that this helps some people realize the differences between some of this stuff. There is nothing wrong with it, right? Again, humans are biologically designed to be like this. If God didn't want us to be like this, then he wouldn't have designed us with physically larger males. It's that simple. For all you women who don't like it, I'm sorry. Maybe in your next life, you'll be able to come back as an ant or a bee or something. But for now, you just got to live the life the best way that you can. And one of the ways to do that is through polygyny. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. And until next time, y'all take care.